When a fighter talks tough, when he makes things personal with a pound-for-pound king, he had better be prepared to back it up. Jose Benavidez Jr. walked into fight week brimming with confidence, insisting that Terence "Bud" Crawford was nothing special. He looked at the undefeated champion, listened to the way other fighters spoke in reverence about him, and dismissed it all as hype. "I don't see anything special in Crawford," Benavidez declared. "I don't know why everyone's scared of him. Everyone's sleeping, but soon they'll wake up, because I'm going to beat his ass come Saturday." But Terence Crawford was not the kind of fighter you wanted to give added incentive. He had built a career not only on his talent, but also on his ability to punish opponents who dared to provoke him. He had a ruthless streak, the kind that transformed dismissive words into brutal lessons. Crawford was the kind of man who could break another fighter down in ways he couldn't even imagine, and on that October night, Jose Benavidez Jr. was about to find out just how steep that learning curve could be. The hype around the fight wasn't manufactured. Benavidez had tried to rattle Crawford at every turn. He taunted him at press conferences, shadowed him during media days, and talked about exposing him as overrated. "He said we all bark but no bite," Benavidez repeated for the cameras. "Come Saturday, he's going to find out how hard I bite." This wasn't just a boxing match anymore. It was a battle of wills. The trash talk, the posturing, the jabs outside the ring, all of it built to the question that loomed before the opening bell. Would Crawford's mental armor crack under the harassment, or would he respond the way he always did, by punishing the disrespect with cold precision? Crawford remained composed throughout the build-up, but his silence wasn't weakness. It was a calculation. He had faced talkers before. He had faced men who thought words could win fights. And he had dismantled every single one of them. For him, there was only one language that mattered, the language of fists, delivered under the bright lights. The fight began with Crawford doing what he always does, taking his time, studying his man, and downloading information. He came out calm, probing with jabs to the body, circling with his usual southpaw stance, giving Benavidez a few looks but never overextending. He didn't need to rush. His ring IQ was unmatched, and he had 12 rounds to set traps and spring them. Benavidez looked comfortable in the opening round, confident enough to fire back and hold his ground. But while the challenger was trying to establish himself, Crawford was already dissecting him, noting tendencies, and testing reactions. By the second round, the outlines of Crawford's plan were beginning to show. He continued probing with that southpaw jab, sliding in a straight left to the body. He was scoring to the midsection, softening his opponent, knowing that every body shot was an investment in the later rounds. Benavidez responded with his peekaboo defense, high guard up, trying to counter with the right hand he was known for. But Crawford wasn't giving him the opportunities. He doubled his jab, worked his way inside, and snuck in another hook to the ribs. The commentators took notice. Crawford had been targeting the body from the start, and already it was having an effect. They reminded the audience that Benavidez's right knee had been compromised years earlier by a gunshot wound, a bullet that tore through his femoral artery. That leg had never been the same. Crawford knew it, and he was merciless in exploiting it. Every body shot, every angle, and every pivot forced Benavidez to put pressure on that injured leg. Over time, it would drain him, and Crawford knew exactly how to drag him into deep water. Still, to his credit, Benavidez had his moments. He flashed combinations, caught Crawford with a clean jab, and reminded everyone why he had been touted as a talented fighter since his teenage years. He had size, reach, and sharpness in spots. But moments weren't enough. He wasn't asserting himself, and Crawford was more than happy to let the rounds tick by as he increased the pressure. By the middle rounds, Crawford's bodywork was undeniable. He was ripping shots around Benavidez's guard, slipping to the inside and digging to the midsection. And with every round, Benavidez's movement slowed, and his breathing grew heavier. Crawford's jabs split the guard more frequently now, and combinations began to land flush upstairs. The crowd, sensing the shift, roared as Bud let his hands go. Benavidez had entered the fight insisting that Crawford wasn't special. But standing across from him, absorbing the punishment, he must have realized how wrong he was. Crawford wasn't just quick. He wasn't just strong. He was a master of rhythm and timing, switching stances effortlessly, dictating range with surgical precision. He gave looks no other fighter gave. He punished mistakes instantly. He set traps 2 or 3 moves ahead. And he carried a mean streak that only grew sharper once a man dared to disrespect him. By round 7, the fight's direction was undeniable. Benavidez was tiring. His punches came slower, his guard stayed tighter, and his output dwindled. Crawford, by contrast, looked as fresh as he had in the opening round. He was controlling the outside, darting in and out, landing clean shots at will. The jab, the straight left, and the right hook, all were landing. And every time Benavidez tried to rally, Crawford shut him down with sharp counters. The 8th round was particularly brutal. Crawford stood in front of Benavidez and unloaded, ripping combinations to the body and head, making him pay for every defensive lapse. The challenger was breathing hard, his legs looked heavy, and he found himself covering up for long stretches. Crawford, sensing weakness, pressed harder. His precision and variety overwhelmed Benavidez, who had no answers left but to endure. By the 9th and 10th rounds, Benavidez was running on fumes. His earlier bravado had evaporated. He no longer looked like a man who believed he could win. He looked like a man trying to survive. Crawford, meanwhile, began gunning for the finish. He was in complete control, landing at will, mixing shots to the head and body, and tormenting his opponent with angles and footwork. The crowd could feel it. The end was coming. Benavidez still had heart. He tried to fire back, tried to rally, and even landed a few clean hooks. But every exchange tilted in Crawford's favor. Every punch Benavidez threw cost him twice as much in return. Crawford was too sharp, too mean, and too relentless. The champion smelled blood, and he wanted the knockout. By the championship rounds, Benavidez was in full retreat. His combinations were gone, his hands sluggish, and his face swelling from the punishment. He was no longer fighting to win. He was fighting not to be humiliated. But Crawford wasn't interested in mercy. He was interested in sending a message. Then, in the 12th round, the inevitable happened. Crawford closed in, feinted low, and unleashed a vicious right uppercut, a punch he hadn't shown all fight. It crashed through Benavidez's guard and snapped his head back violently. Stunned and off balance, Benavidez staggered. Crawford pounced, following up with a savage right hook that sent him crashing to the canvas. The crowd erupted. Benavidez struggled to rise, but the fight was effectively over. Crawford had delivered the exclamation point he wanted. The stoppage sealed what everyone already knew. Crawford was on another level. He had carried Benavidez into deep waters, punished him for his words, and finished him in emphatic fashion. It wasn't just a win. It was a lesson. For Crawford, it was another reminder of his place among the sports elite. He wasn't just undefeated, he was untouchable. He wasn't just skilled, he was ruthless. Every time someone questioned him, he delivered an answer in blood and bruises. And that night in Omaha, he reminded the world why so many fighters whispered his name with a mix of fear and respect. For Benavidez, the defeat was sobering. He had built himself up with words and tried to rattle the champion with bravado, but in the ring there was no hiding from the truth. He wasn't on Crawford's level. Not close. The gap between them was enormous. And as the referee waved off the contest, Benavidez was left not only beaten but also humbled. Crawford, meanwhile, stood tall, basking in the roar of his hometown crowd. He had once again proven his brilliance and once again silenced the doubters. To those who had been paying attention, the result was no surprise. They had seen it before. Crawford was, and remains, one of the most complete fighters in boxing, a man capable of dismantling any style, of adapting to any challenge, of turning trash talk into painful lessons. And yet, the fight with Benavidez also highlighted something deeper about Crawford's character. He wasn't content to simply outbox his opponents. He wanted to punish them. He wanted to break them. He wanted to make sure they never forgot the night they stepped into the ring with him. Benavidez had called him nothing special. Crawford made sure he left the ring knowing just how wrong he had been. As the crowd filed out that night, one question lingered. Where does Terence Crawford rank among the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world? For some, he was already number one. For others, he was climbing the mountain. But to anyone who watched him dismantle Benavidez, one thing was clear: Bud Crawford was special. Special in ways words couldn't capture, only fists could prove. And so, another chapter was written in the story of Terence Crawford. Another doubter silenced. Another challenger punished. Another reminder that when it comes to Bud, the only safe prediction is that he will find a way to win, and often in the most devastating fashion.